The Curses and the Covenants, A History Weaver Mystery, Book 2, by Connie Worden. Read by the author. Chapter 12. Constable Martineau was in his mid-30s and handsome. There was no denying that. He was clean-shaven and his abundant, dead-straight black hair was cut short. The uniform didn't hurt either. Just the look I liked in a man. His well-defined bone structure and dark looks hinted towards his ancestors having been in this country longer than mine had. Possibly Métis. Tall, dark, and handsome. And a cop. Like I wasn't nervous enough already. He, of course, was nothing but professional with me. Not that I would have expected to have the slightest effect on him. In spite of myself, out of curiosity, I glanced at his left hand on the table and noticed the bare ring finger. "Stop it, you little idiot," my internal critic told me. "Besides, you know he'll have a girlfriend. Just because he doesn't have a ring doesn't mean he's actually single." The interview didn't take long. He asked if he could record our conversation, and I told him everything Julia had said to me. After I finished, he nodded and asked, "And that was it? She didn't give you any other details?" "No, nothing." "Did she mention her parents at all?" Oh, were they the ones really under investigation, I wondered? Just by implication that they were part of the they who hadn't done anything about what she told me. What about on other occasions? What has she mentioned about her family life? Very little. She doesn't really open up, except for the one occasion when she dropped her bombshell. She hasn't talked about her dad at all. She's mentioned her mum in passing. She seems to resent her. Julia resents her mum, I mean. She complained that she didn't want counselling and therapy, but her mum was forcing it on her. Julia doesn't seem to think it does her any good, or that she needs it. At least that's what she said. Has Julia ever shown signs of abuse? Any bruising or cuts or anything of the sort? No, never. Not that I've noticed. She does always have long sleeves, usually a sweatshirt. If there had been any injuries anywhere other than her face, I wouldn't have been able to see them. There's been nothing major like broken bones or anything. Okay, and what about Mrs. Fairchild? Have you ever seen any signs or suspicious injuries on her? So that was it. It was the doctor who was actually under investigation for domestic abuse. At least, that seemed the likeliest conclusion from this line of questioning. I haven't met Julia's mum. I've only seen her out my office window one time when she came to pick Julia up after school. Are you allowed to tell me anything? I asked. Is Julia claiming anything about her father? The officer just smiled mildly. Would it surprise you if Julia was claiming this? Well, no, I guess not. Why is that? Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I've been informed that Julia has the reputation for not telling the truth, for making things up for attention. So I suppose it wouldn't surprise me if she was also making up stories about an abusive father. You wouldn't be inclined to believe her if she was making such claims? I don't know, I said honestly. I've only known her a few weeks. I don't feel like I know her at all, really. I do think there must have been some kind of trauma to trigger the chronic lying. That usually doesn't come out of nowhere. But I wouldn't know from where or from whom. I haven't seen any signs of physical abuse, that's all I can say. Is that your professional opinion, that she's had trauma in her life? Now look, I'm not a licensed therapist, I'm just a school counselor. It's quite a different thing. And to be honest, I'm very new at that. If it was in a larger school, my credentials wouldn't have been enough to land me the job of guidance counselor even. If you want a professional opinion, you'd better talk to a therapist. But just based on my life experience, everyone has some kind of trauma. He had been doing all the question asking and giving me nothing. There was some information I wanted to know too. I didn't know what he could tell me, but it was worth a shot. Can you tell me how you came to be involved? I mean, I thought because the people under investigation were all minors, this was going to be handled by social services. What changed? He cleared his throat and shifted in his seat as though weighing how much he could tell me. There was some question of adult involvement in the allegations. The caseworker's superintendent contacted us at that point. He'd told me nothing, really, but enough. Yes, Julia had been making claims about, well, obviously, her dad. That seemed plain from the direction of questioning. It was the first I'd heard about it from any quarter, so it must have come out in Julia's session with Sarah yesterday. And at that point, Sarah must have known she couldn't handle it herself. Although if Julia was making up accusations, this new information could also be false. If she was lying, she was creating a world of hurt for all involved. I hadn't met the man yet, but I already had some sort of strong emotion regarding Julia's dad. I didn't know yet if I felt sorry for Dr. Fairchild or disgust for him. That would depend on what the investigation would show, I supposed. I told myself not to let my own personal impressions of the family as I met them color what the evidence would reveal. I felt like experience had proven me to be a good judge of character, however, and I tended to rely too heavily on my intuitions about people. People who proved to be smarmy later instantly struck me as smarmy on first meeting. I could smell bad acting a mile away. It would be hard to override what instinct was telling me to stay neutral until the facts were all in on this one. Unfortunately, Constable Martineau's good looks were probably doing a little overriding of their own when it came to my intuitions about him. It was quite a first impression he'd made on me, and although I knew I couldn't trust it, it was overwhelmingly positive. "You know nothing about the guy," I scolded myself. "He could be a complete dirtbag and you wouldn't know it just because he's an attractive man." But as I got in my car and drove away from the police station, I found myself wondering how often we'd come into contact now that we were both somewhat involved in Julia's case. And the mental image of the deep brown eyes that had been examining mine while we were talking stayed with me all the rest of the night. Of course he'd had to look into my eyes. He was just trying to form his own impression of me as a witness, that's all it was. Regardless, there was a little warmth from the memory that was still with me when I woke up the next morning. I tried to shake it off, but it wouldn't be immediately shaken. April 21st, 1898. Events are unfolding very rapidly indeed. I suppose this is why the words gold and rush go together. Ole did decide to bring his find to the local assayer's attention. From there, the railroad and a mining magnate named Mr. Jonathan O'Leary became involved as soon as they heard about the discovery of a sizable vein of gold in the area. They want to be the first to be in on the production of the gold. They'll work with Ole so that he gets a share of the profits. Ole informs me his promised share seems more than fair, and more than he expected. I can't help being delighted at our turn of fate, as is Ole. What's more, Mr. John Timori, the head of the railroad, has decided to bring the railroad this way to be able to haul out the gold in record time and haul in supplies for the miners. They expect an influx of prospectors and workers to our little area. Work has begun on clearing the land to bring the railway through, and construction for a bridge across the ravine where Gold Creek runs, Ole's name for the branch of the river has been unofficially adopted, is underway. I couldn't be happier. A row of housing for the future workers has also been started. The makeshift houses are being built along the river that runs through our little valley, the Beaver River. The railroad wastes no time, especially where gold is concerned. The railroad was bound to come this way sooner or later, Mr. Timori assures us. He has incentive to speed up the process. I met the two men Ole will be working with, who will be heading up the mining effort, Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Timori. I can't claim that my fancy was taken with either one, but they are businessmen. I must expect them to be businesslike rather than genteel. And being frontiersmen, they can't be bothered to affect the manners of the class of society to which they would naturally belong back in England. Nevertheless, their singular focus on nothing but the profits they can make off this venture struck me as rather crass. It will be up to us women moving into the area to civilize it, I suppose. And the railroad will bring civilization. That is the effect I must admit to being most desirous of. Much more than merely the money. Ole delights in the adventure of it all. He also sees the prospect of prosperity being brought to the area as highly desirable. I can't help but think of the advantages civilization will bring. At first, there will be inconveniences, I dare say. So far, the rumble and dust of the constant stream of wagons across our land, bringing stone from the quarry to be used in building the bridge for the railroad, I try to remind myself is a necessary evil for the other effects of all's discovery that I hope to see soon. I keep my eyes fixed on the promise of a local hotel with linen tablecloths and proper china, serving high tea in the afternoon. Bliss. I must confess that there are niceties of home back in England that I find myself craving. Just to have something clean and refined and dainty and feminine around me again is an unbearable longing some days. Everything in my world now is rough and bare and sparse and, well, manlike. The building of the railroad itself will be more of the same, rough and dirty and crude, but it's what the railroad will bring that I look forward to with great anticipation.